The nation's port economic regulator, the Nigerian Shippers Council, in collaboration with the Union of African Shippers Council, is to hold the 9th Shippers Day here in Lagos, Nigeria. The 3-day event, which is to commence on Monday, January 16th, 2022, is expected to be declared open by President Mohammadu Buhari, while the Minister of Transportation, Mr. Mu'azuJaji Sambo, is the chief host. While the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Shippers Council, Mr. Emmanuel, Jime, joins me live on Business Nigeria here in the studios to provide more insight into the event today. Mr. Jime, it's such an absolute delight to have you on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy New Year, compliments of the season.
Thank you. We wish you the same. So, I mean, the Nigerian Shippers Council is playing host to shippers organizations in the continent, West Africa, and of course, Central African sub-regions. Can I ask you to walk us through a brief of what this program, this hybrid event is about?
Yeah, once again, thank you so much for having me. So the African Shippers Day is a biennial event of the Union of African Shippers Councils. The maiden edition of this event took place in 1999, and it was held in Accra, Ghana. This is the 9th edition, and the Nigerian Shippers Council is working together with the Federal Minister of Transportation in order to be the host of the 9th edition. The purpose of the event actually is to bring shippers in West and Central Africa together under one roof. In order for us to be able to exchange ideas, share experiences on contemporary issues bordering and affecting the maritime industry and trade. And of course, at the forum, shippers will also be given an opportunity to exhibit their products. This, of course, will enable those shippers to be able to network. In the course of doing that, businesses, of course, to business will be concluded, and of course, contracts will be executed as well. That, in essence, in summary, is the purpose for the staging of the event, the 9th African Shippers Day. During this conference, this particular edition, a number of things are going to be taking place simultaneously. So, for instance, there's going to be a conference, and during that conference, a number of thematic topics will be discussed. Yeah. So, for instance, we're going to be discussing the African Continental Free Trade Agreement as a vehicle for Africa's economic growth and development.
All right. We'll get into that and some other details of the program. Yeah. It's the 9th edition, the 9th in the series.
Yes.
And you said it started in 1999, 24 years after.
Yes.
What would you describe as the achievements of this program over the years?
So the program, as I said, essentially is meant, to bring all of the shippers within, this sub-region. We're talking West and Central Africa, bordering on, of course, the Gulf of Guinea, together. And in the course of, in the course of delivering on the program, so a number of things are put on the table, for discussions. As I indicated, if you were to let me say so, a number of very important topics are going to be discussed during this particular session. For instance, the role of Incoterms, in 2020 implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. We're also going to be discussing payment systems in international trade. And last but not least, we're also going to be looking at coastal shipping as a sine qua non, for integration of trade. Now, you'll agree that the mere fact that we're going to be looking at these thematic subjects clearly is an indication that the conference, the edition is aimed, at introducing shippers, to these very important topics. Most importantly, to bring us closely in order for us to be able to get Nigeria and indeed Africa to mainstream, into international trade. So I can use that as the point of determining as to whether or not, this particular event, has benefits that will accrue. And it is those benefits that I think ultimately will, nosedive into what you can call the achievements that have been recorded. There's one particular instance of what the Union of African Shippers Councils has done that I feel is very, very important, even for the purposes of this discussion, to record as an achievement. If we remember, not too long ago, when the shipping companies in Nigeria, during the period of COVID, decided to institute what they called a peak season surcharge, which was going to cost about $1,500 per TEU. The Union of African Shippers Councils, working with the Nigerian Shippers Council, agitated and fought robustly in order to ensure that that particular surcharge was removed. Now, eventually, it was removed. That, in my opinion, is the kind of achievement that the engagements that we have during the session of the African Shippers Day actually ultimately nosedives into. So those, in my view, are the sort of achievements that can be recorded. The mere fact that you have created a platform for African shippers, to come together, sit into discussions and analyze what are the success factors in our various domains, okay, and what are the challenges that we have, and looking at a holistic approach as to how you can solve those problems that ultimately impact on the delivery of services in our maritime domain. That, in my view, are the kinds of achievements that you're going to record as a result of the incidents of this particular engagement that we're going to be having during this forum.
Yes. Executive Secretary, Nigerian Shippers Council, I'm also curious to ask you if participation at this hybrid event is absolutely free, and who would you classify as those who should attend or be at this event?
Okay, so participation is free. I mean, for records.
Absolutely free.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And the reason it has to be free is, one, you want to encourage these robust engagements to take place. Because if you look down the road, the results that come out of the engagements and in the manner in which they ultimately impact on the delivery of services in our ports, in our maritime space, and particularly in this very session where we're going to be discussing the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. That, in my opinion, is something that you need to afford shippers an opportunity to get the kinds of information that will be made available to them during the event. So clearly, I mean, it was important for us to make sure that this event was conducted in a manner that would not impose undue financial constraints on those that are targeted to participate. If you're asking for those who, by the way, I would like to inform that as I speak today, we have received confirmation of over 13 African nations 13. Out of the 19 membership of the Union of African Shippers Councils who are coming to join us on Monday to begin the process of this engagement. Of course, we're also looking at sister agencies. I'm proud to say that we have gotten the cooperation, the partnership, and the understanding of our sister agencies in the maritime industry. So, for instance, NIMASA has taken up some, part of the responsibility in assisting us. The MPA has done the same. I want to also extend a shout out to NIWA for the level of support and the cooperation that we, and this is quite interesting because in the past, the picture that one has had, particularly of government agencies, is that they were always engaged in this big bat, fighting each other to the extent that, we are not showing sufficient enough support. But from what has happened with this particular African Shippers Day, I can say proudly that there is now an indication clearly that the agencies of government, particularly those of us who are in the maritime industry, are reaching out to each other and working hand in hand in order for us to deliver on, services in our maritime domain.
And I wonder if that collaboration and partnership is also extended to the region, the continent.
Yes, of course. I mean, as I indicated, the major topic for discussion this year is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, the Secretary General of the AFTA is actually not only attending, is actually delivering a paper. We also have some, very important international organizations like Afri-Exim Bank, and of course, as I said, the AFTA Secretariat, who are, joining us, participating, and actually even engaging in the conversations that will be taking place during the event.
So let's stay with the agreement. The theme of this year's program is African Continental Free Trade Agreement, a veritable platform for African shippers to mainstream into global trade.
Yes.
A number of questions begging for answer, but can I ask you just how perhaps member countries here in the continent are strategizing to optimize the potentials of the AFCFTA?
I think it's important to put a notice that perhaps this development, I'm talking about the African Continental Free Trade area, is perhaps one of the most monumental developments that have occurred in our time. The challenge that we have had in the past as a continent has been the inability of Africans to actually recognize that within our borders there is sufficient enough basis for intra-African trade. I'd like to share a particular experience, that speaks, I think, very, very eloquently, to the point about the need, to have, intra-African trade. Did you know that until recently, if you needed to export cargo from, let's say, Apapa to Accra, you needed to engage a shipping company whose major hub is in Europe. And so goods that left Nigeria for Accra would have first to go to Europe before then they will be taken back, to Accra because of the incidence of, the hub logic. Most of the shipping companies, of course, are not owned by Nigerians. Most of them are not owned by Africans. So we had that kind of challenge. What AFTA is about is to address that kind of logistical nightmare to ensure that it is now possible that cargo departing Nigeria will go straight to Accra, and of course, vice versa. Now, what that does is ultimately is to open up, the horizon and to make certain that, there is intra-African trade that is going on within the continent. Now, that to me is such a big development that we all must key in, and every one of us, we need to be on board, to ensure that the free trade agreement, is given the teeth and is given the tools, is given the equipment that it's needed. Let me also emphasize that, the whole concept of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is to ensure that there is a removal of tariffs and non-tariff barriers and obstacles. That is what this is about. So you just cast your mind back and look a few years ahead. That will give you, I think, a bird's eye view into, what I like to describe the monumental development that will be occurring as far as intra-African trade is concerned. So that is the kind of situation that the African Shippers Day is actually delving into in order for us to provide. There will be reviews. There will be available, information and material that, will be shared, to those who are participating so that they are now better informed as to what the possibilities are and, exactly, what has been conceived in order to assist particularly the Nigerian shipper with the humongous opportunities that are going to be opening up because of the incidence of AFTA, of course, the effect of intra-African trade.
Well, so in terms of implementation, for instance, about the agreement, 2 years after, for instance, in the country here, the agreement has not been implemented just yet. I know it's in the process and all of that, but will that in any way put a question mark when about these events and when other African countries in the continent gather here in Lagos?
Yeah, so first let's understand the removal of tariffs, especially local tariffs, was always going to be a challenge. Because then you have to recognize that with tariffs, also there is the question about resources that are available to the various governments in the regions. That's the reason why within the concept of AfTA itself and its implementation, it is understood that some of the steps that will have to be taken will have to be progressive. In other words, incrementally. It is not something you're going to just simply drop it in one fell swoop and get everything running. No, that wasn't actually even how AfTA was conceived. So the point being made is that there is progress, but of course, slowly and surely. The fact of the matter is that unless and until this integration actually occurs and takes place effectively, there is simply no way are we able to open up the possibilities for trade within the continent. So I share the views you've made and perhaps the concerns about how slow. But what gives me comfort is that we're moving slowly but surely, and that for me is a reason to be optimistic about what the future holds as far as the implementation of the agreement is concerned.
And speaking about the prospects and optimism, 2023, I wonder what your prospects, the prospects you have or you're seeing and your projections for 2023 after this 3-day event. You may also want to perhaps break down. I mean, it's a 3-day event. I'm wondering what will be happening day 1, day 2, day 3.
Oh, okay. So as I said, there's going to be the conference part where these very important topics, and we have very good resource persons coming from different parts of the world who are going to be giving us lectures and taking us through. That essentially will be what will happen on day 1. There's also the exhibition part. As I indicated earlier, we have a number of exhibitors that are coming from different parts of the continent, in order for them to exhibit their products. That essentially will take a huge part of the activities of the African Shippers Day. There's also the excursion part of the event. We're looking at taking African shippers around some of the facilities that we have, particularly the Lekki Deep Sea Port, which hopefully we can say is in a point where operations will start.
Start any moment from now.
Any moment from now. So, I mean, and that is an important development on our shores.
Absolutely.
And we need for Africa to see that not only are we positioned in this country, but actually we're also, giving the necessary information to our fellow brothers and sisters from different parts of our continent to take advantage of what we have on ground. There's also the question of non-tariff barriers. Let's say, for instance, between Apapa and Seme, all those checkpoints that constituted obstacles. AfTA has actually come down heavily and asked the Nigerian Shippers Council, working under the auspices of what we call the Port Standing Task Team, to ensure the clearance of those obstacles, so that there'll be free flow of goods and services across our borders. That is part of the kinds of integration that I think ultimately will be necessary, for AfTA to be, a success story.
Well, Mr. Jime, we have to round off our conversation any moment from now. But I've just taken a look at the theme again, and the second part of it says a veritable platform for African shippers to mainstream into global trade. Yes. I mean, beyond the continent.
Yes.
I wonder perhaps you could speak about that for a moment as you also get to share your final words with us here on the program.
Yeah, so mainstreaming Africa into global trade. I believe what simply that points to is the fact that you first need to organize internally and make sure that the trade component within the continent is robust enough in order for us to become very, very competitive as a continent. Part of the challenge is that we don't have the competitive edge in our relationship. That's perhaps the reason why there is this imbalance as far as trade between us and the rest of the world is concerned. So the Shippers Day provides us an opportunity for African shippers, to look internally at our own systems and assure ourselves of the need, to work together as one continent, afford each other the ability and the opportunity of seeing where are the loopholes, where are the areas where we do not have the comparative advantage in order to be competitive. Now, these are the sort of, scenarios that will be playing out during the African Shippers Day, because it gives every participating country the opportunity of recognizing our strengths, our weaknesses, and then by the time you're able to holistically address these challenges, it puts you in a frame where you can then really become very, very competitive in the manner in which you're trading with the rest of the world. That actually is the concept behind the discussions we're going to be having, and that's why we're actually addressing the concept of mainstreaming Africa into international and global trade. That really is the concept.
Well, Mr. Emmanuel Jime, it's a fine place to anchor our conversation with you. Mr. Emmanuel Jime is the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Shippers Council. And of course, we're looking forward to Monday, January 16th, 2023, African Shippers Day, the 9th edition of the program. Thank you indeed for coming here on Business Nigeria. Wish you a successful outing as well.
Thank you so much for having us one more time, and we'll look forward to seeing you and your team come to cover the events as well.
We will be there.
Thank you.
We'll be there. Thank you indeed. So there you go, Mr. Emmanuel Jime, Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Shippers Council, live here on Business Nigeria.